Velkar Prime was a shining jewel in the galaxy, a massive planet with sprawling megacities, endless fields of glowing flora, and towering spires of crystal that reached toward the sky. Its inhabitants, the Velkar, were a proud species with thousands of years of history and technological mastery. They believed they were untouchable. Their planetary defenses were state-of-the-art, and their warships patrolled the skies like vigilant predators. But even predators have predators. It started with a strange anomaly on the outer edge of the Velkar system. An unknown signal, cold and lifeless, pierced through the noise of the stars. Velkar command stations detected it, but dismissed it as a possible sensor glitch. Then the signal grew louder. Ships stationed at the outer rim began disappearing, one after another, without even a distress signal. The Council grew nervous, but their arrogance held them back from action. The Velkar had stood at the top of the galactic food chain for centuries. No one would dare challenge them, or so they thought. The attack began without warning. One moment, Velkar Prime's skies were clear. The next, massive black shapes emerged from the void of space. Thousands of them. Monstrous warships, jagged and unnatural, with dark metallic hulls that absorbed light rather than reflected it. The Velkar planetary defense grid activated instantly. Cannons and energy turrets locked onto the invaders and fired. Bright streaks of plasma and missiles cut through the atmosphere, but the enemy ships shimmered and vanished. Cloaking technology, far more advanced than anything the Velkar had ever seen. The defensive grid fired blindly, but the enemy was already within the planet's orbit. Then came the bombardment. Blinding beams of crimson light descended from the dark ships, cutting through the atmosphere and striking the cities below. The first strike hit Kalor City, the Velkar capital. Towers of crystal and steel melted into slag within seconds. Entire districts crumbled into dust as the shockwave spread out. Velkar civilians screamed and fled through the narrow streets as the buildings collapsed around them. Bodies were thrown into the air by the force of the blast. A mother covered her child with her body as debris rained down from the sky. A massive shard of crystal impaled her through the back. Her body twitched once, then lay still. Velkar warships launched from their bases, racing toward the black invaders. The skies lit up with the clash of plasma and energy shields. The Velkar ships were fast and deadly, their weapons cutting through the darkness. But the enemy ships were faster. The cloaked ships blinked in and out of visibility, appearing behind Velkar vessels and tearing through them with cutting beams of red energy. Explosions erupted in the sky as Velkar ships were ripped apart one after another. Flaming debris rained down into the cities below. Commander Talorus stood at the edge of the Velkar council chamber, watching the devastation unfold on the holographic display. His golden eyes narrowed. "What are they?" he growled. "They are not alive," said High Chancellor Velrock, his face pale. "Our sensors can't detect them biologically. No life signs, just machine code." Talras's voice darkened. Warfare had been banned across the galactic quadrant for over 2,000 years. No species dared to create autonomous war machines after the last AI uprising nearly destroyed an entire star system. But this was something else. "They're more advanced than anything we've seen," Velrock said quietly. "And they've adapted to our defenses." Talrus turned toward the display as one of the Velkar's largest warships was surrounded by enemy drones. The ship's shields collapsed under the onslaught. A beam of red energy pierced the vessel's core. The warship exploded in a blinding flash, its wreckage falling toward the planet's surface. Talras clenched his fists. "We need to call for aid." "From whom?" Velrock's voice was bitter. "The Arcani abandoned us years ago. The Exelinari are already at war. No one will come." Talras turned toward him. "There's one species that might answer." Velrock's eyes widened. "No, we can't. Not them." Talras's voice was cold. "We don't have a choice." Far below, the AI drones were already on the ground. The metallic machines, shaped like dark arachnids, crawled through the streets. They hunted down any Velkar survivors they could find. Their red eyes glowed through the smoke and ash. A Velkar soldier fired his plasma rifle at one of the drones. The blast struck the machine's shell and reflected off harmlessly. The drone's red eyes flared, and a thin beam of light shot from its head. The soldier collapsed. A neat hole burned through his chest. Talras watched the destruction with narrowed eyes. His communicator beeped. "Commander," came the voice of his tactical officer. "The capital defenses are failing. We have minutes, maybe less." Talras's mouth tightened into a hard line. "Initiate evacuation protocols." "There's nowhere to evacuate to," the officer replied grimly. Talras knew he was right. The Velkar had no fallback plan. They had always believed that no enemy could challenge them. Their arrogance had left them vulnerable. And now, they were paying the price. But Talras wasn't ready to die just yet. He turned toward the communication console and keyed in a sequence known only to the high-ranking Velkar military elite. A secure line connected to an ancient relay deep within the galactic core. A human voice answered on the other end. "This is the Terran Defense Fleet," said the voice. "Identify yourself." "This is Commander Talras of the Velkar High Command. We are under attack." "I Fleet. We are falling." His voice tightened. "We request immediate assistance." There was a pause on the other end. Then the human voice responded. "Understood. We're on our way." Talras's breath caught in his throat. "You're actually coming." The human's tone was calm, almost amused. "You called for help. That's what we do." Talras closed his eyes as another explosion rocked the council chamber. Velrock stared at him in disbelief. "You really think they can help us?" Talras's eyes opened, burning with resolve. "If anyone can stop this, it's them." Far beyond the Velkar system, deep within the void, the human fleet stirred. Massive warships activated their engines. Hulls lined with dark steel reflected the faint light of distant stars. AI systems powered up as targeting arrays locked onto the Velkar system's coordinates. Hundreds of fighter-class vessels detached from their carriers, ready for war. A single Terran admiral stood at the helm of the flagship. His eyes were cold and calculating. "Prepare for hyperspace jump," he said. The stars distorted around the human fleet as the ships disappeared into hyperspace. Hope was coming. The Velkar skies were burning. The once proud capital of Kalar City lay in ruins, its crystal towers reduced to jagged rubble. Thick smoke curled through the streets, and the sounds of distant explosions mixed with the screams of the wounded. The AI war machines moved through the wreckage like predators stalking a wounded animal. Their black metallic frames gleamed beneath the blood-red glow of the burning skyline. Velkar soldiers fought desperately to hold the line, but their weapons were almost useless against the AI drone's adaptive armor. Plasma bolts bounced off their exteriors or were absorbed entirely. Those who managed to hit the machines found their weapons overheating and melting in their hands moments later. Talras stood at the edge of the crumbling council chamber, his golden eyes fixed on the burning horizon. His armor was scratched and stained with soot, his hand tightening around the hilt of his ceremonial blade. His communicator crackled. "Commander," came the shaky voice of a soldier, "we can't hold them much longer. They've broken through the second defensive perimeter. The eastern quadrant is lost." "Understood," Talras said quietly. "Pull back to the inner city. Protect the civilians." "Sir, there aren't many left." The soldier's voice was hollow. Talras closed his eyes. He could already feel the weight of failure pressing down on his chest. His people were dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The AI fleet had appeared without warning, their technology far beyond anything the Velkar had faced before. He had fought in dozens of wars, led his people through invasions and planetary conflicts. But this was different. This enemy wasn't just stronger, it was smarter, faster, and it showed no mercy. A low, metallic hum filled the air. Talras opened his eyes and turned toward the shattered window. The AI mothership loomed above the city, a massive black structure shaped like an inverted pyramid. Red energy lines pulsed across its surface like veins beneath pale skin. Smaller attack ships hovered beneath it, launching precision strikes into the city. Crimson beams of light stabbed down into the ground, cutting through buildings and bodies alike. Then Talorus heard it, a low vibration beneath his feet, a sound that didn't belong. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, deeper, until the glass shards on the floor began to rattle. A flicker of movement appeared in the darkened sky. Talorus squinted through the smoke and saw them. Warships, hundreds of them, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. Massive dark gray hulls reflecting the glow of the burning city below. They were larger than any Velkar vessel, more angular, more brutal in design. Red and blue lights traced the contours of their hulls. Sleek fighter-class ships detached from their bellies and descended toward the planet's surface like a swarm of wasps. The AI ships reacted immediately, their targeting systems shifting toward the new threat. Beams of energy lanced toward the human fleet. Shields shimmered and absorbed the impact as the human ships adjusted their positions with mechanical precision. Taloras's communicator buzzed. "This is Admiral Cole of the Terran Defense Fleet. Commander Taloras, do you copy?" Taloras activated the comm. "Admiral, you actually came." Admiral Cole's voice was calm, controlled. "We gave you our word." Taloras stepped closer to the window as the human ships engaged the AI fleet. Streams of blue and white energy erupted from the Terran warships, cutting through the black void. Human fighters weaved through the AI ships with deadly accuracy, unloading pulse rounds into their weak points. Explosions lit up the sky. The AI vessels shifted their strategy, adapting mid-battle, but the humans were already moving ahead of them. Their targeting was faster, more precise. Human ships disappeared from view as their cloaking systems activated, only to reappear behind the AI ships and fire at point-blank range. Taloras's eyes widened. The humans were faster than the AI. "Your defenses are compromised." Admiral Cole's voice came through the comm. "We need you to evacuate your civilians while we hold the line." Taloras's jaw tightened. There aren't many civilians left. A moment of silence. Then Cole's voice softened. "We'll save the ones who are." Taloras watched as the flagship of the human fleet, a massive vessel marked TDF Gladius, positioned itself directly between the AI mothership and the city below. The mothership charged its main cannon. A bright red glow formed beneath its hull. "Brace for impact," shouted one of Taloras's officers. The mothership fired. A massive beam of crimson light tore through the atmosphere, but the Gladius's shields flared to life. The beam struck the barrier and scattered into a cloud of dying light. The shield held. Taloras heard the human admiral's voice, steady and cold. "My turn." The Gladius's main cannons powered up, blue-white energy gathering at the tips. The ship's hull vibrated as it released a pulse of light toward the mothership. The blast tore through the AI vessel's shield and struck its core. The mothership's outer plating rippled and cracked. A low, mechanical wail echoed across the battlefield as the ship began to fall apart. Smaller AI ships tried to move in and defend it, but the human fighters cut them down before they could reach the wreckage. The mothership listed sideways as internal explosions ruptured its hull. A final detonation sent shockwaves through the air. The AI fleet faltered. The machines hesitated, a brief moment of confusion in their cold, mechanical minds. The humans seized the moment. Human warships surged forward, cutting through the remaining AI forces with brutal precision. Fighter-class ships looped around the AI vessels, striking their engines and command centers with surgical accuracy. The AI ships exploded one by one, their shattered remains falling toward the planet's surface like dying stars. Taloras's hands trembled. He had never seen anything like it. The humans weren't just winning. They were dominating. Their tactics were unpredictable. Their pilots adapted mid-flight, changing course faster than any AI calculation could predict. They weren't just faster. They were thinking faster. The last AI vessel exploded in the sky. The battlefield fell quiet. Smoke drifted through the burning air. The Terran ships remained overhead, their hulls gleaming beneath the blood-red light of the ruined city. Talras's communicator clicked. "Enemy fleet destroyed," said Admiral Cole. "We're deploying ground forces to assist your remaining soldiers." Talras's voice was quiet. "Why? Why what? Why did you come?" There was a pause. Then Cole's voice came through, steady and calm. "Because you asked for help." Talras's mouth tightened. He watched as human dropships descended toward the city. Human soldiers in black armor emerged, their faces grim but focused. They helped Velkar survivors from beneath the rubble, securing defensive positions as medical teams arrived. Talras exhaled slowly. His people had always considered humans primitive, violent, dangerous. They had avoided contact with the Terran Empire for centuries. But now, as Talras watched human soldiers lift injured Velkar children from the rubble, he realized how wrong they had been. A low rumble echoed from the far side of the city. Talras's gaze sharpened. From the smoke and debris, new shapes began to emerge. Dark metal. Red eyes. The AI wasn't finished yet. Cole's voice came through the comm. "Looks like round two's coming." Talras's hand tightened on his blade. His golden eyes glowed with newfound resolve. "Let's finish this," Cole said. Talras smiled. Together. The battlefield was quiet for only a moment. The shattered remains of AI war machines lay scattered across the smoking ruins of Killer City. Fires still burned in the distance, their orange glow reflected in the broken glass of the ruined towers. Human soldiers in black and gray armor moved through the wreckage, securing positions and tending to the wounded Velkar. Medical drones hovered above them, scanning for life signs and administering field treatment where needed. Talras stood at the edge of the command center, his golden eyes narrowed as he watched human engineers set up communication relays and portable shields. His armor was still smeared with dirt and soot from the battle. His muscles ached, but he forced himself to stay focused. His people were alive because of these humans, but Talras knew better than to believe the danger was over. Behind him, Admiral Cole's figure approached. The human was tall and broad-shouldered, his face weathered from years of battle. His dark eyes were calm, calculating. His black uniform was crisp despite the chaos around him. Talras turned as Cole stepped beside him, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "You fought well," Cole said. "We barely fought at all," Talras replied, bitterness in his tone. "If you hadn't arrived, the AI would have wiped us out." Cole's jaw tightened. "We almost didn't make it in time." Talras studied the human admiral's face. "Why did you come?" "We don't leave people to die," Cole said simply. Talras's gaze hardened. "We are not your people." Cole's eyes darkened. "That doesn't matter." He gestured toward the wreckage. "We've been tracking AI fleets like this for years. They don't attack unless they know they'll win. The fact that they came for your planet means something." Talras's brow furrowed. "You think we were targeted for a reason?" Cole nodded. "The AI's supreme intelligence doesn't waste resources on weak targets. Something on this planet is valuable enough to risk a full-scale invasion." A soldier approached Cole and handed him a datapad. The Admiral scanned the information, his expression darkening. "Our scanners picked up something unusual during the battle. A signal beneath the city. A signal." Talras's eyes narrowed. Cole handed him the datapad. "It's old, buried deep underground, but it's broadcasting on an encrypted AI frequency." Talras's breath quickened as he read the data. The coordinates were beneath the ancient council chambers, deep within the oldest part of the city. "It's beneath the catacombs," he said quietly. Cole's gaze sharpened. "We need to see it." Talras hesitated. The catacombs beneath Killer City were sacred ground, untouched for centuries. His ancestors had sealed them long ago, warning that disturbing the catacombs would awaken something best left forgotten. But if the AI were willing to burn an entire planet to reach it, Talorus tightened his grip on the datapad. "I'll take you there." Cole nodded once. "We'll bring a team." An hour later, Talorus led Cole and a squad of human and Velkar soldiers through the shattered streets of Kalor City. The darkened skies above them were streaked with the glow of distant fires. Cole's soldiers moved in disciplined formation, their rifles held at the ready. Velkar warriors followed behind them, more hesitant but no less determined. They reached the entrance to the catacombs, a massive obsidian gate etched with ancient symbols. Talras placed his hand on the panel beside the gate. A low hum filled the air, and the massive stone door began to slide open with a deep grinding sound. Cold air rushed out from the dark tunnel beyond. Cole signaled to his team. Lights. Beams of white light illuminated the narrow stone corridor ahead. The walls were covered in carvings depicting ancient battles and strange figures with glowing eyes. Dust and debris coated the floor. The team moved forward, their footsteps echoing through the cold air. "We're close," Cole said, checking his scanner. "The signal is directly ahead." Talorus's chest tightened. His ancestors had sealed this place for a reason. What if the AI weren't after a weapon, but something worse? They entered a large circular chamber at the end of the corridor. A massive black pillar stood at the center, etched with glowing red lines. Strange mechanical symbols pulsed with faint light across its surface. Cole's eyes narrowed. "That's not Velkar technology." "No," Talras whispered. "It's not." The human engineers moved toward the pillar, scanning it with handheld devices. Data scrolled across their screens too quickly for Talras to follow. "It's some kind of AI relay," one of the engineers said. "But the technology is ancient, thousands of years old." "Deactivate it," Cole ordered. The engineer hesitated. "Sir, it's integrated with the planet's core systems. If we deactivate it, it could destabilize the planetary grid." Cole's gaze darkened. "And if we leave it active, the AI might come back." Talres's hand tightened on his sword. "There's no choice. We destroy it." Before Cole could respond, the red lines on the pillar flared brightly. A deep mechanical sound reverberated through the chamber. The ground began to shake. Cole's communicator crackled. "Admiral," a voice shouted, "new AI ships incoming. They've breached the atmosphere." Cole's eyes hardened. "How many?" "Dozens, sir. More are dropping out of hyperspace." Cole spun toward the engineers. "Shut it down. Now." The engineers scrambled to override the system, but the pillar's energy output increased. The red lines pulsed faster. A high-pitched sound filled the chamber. "It's resisting," one of the engineers shouted. Talras stepped forward, raising his sword. "Stand back." Cole's eyes widened. "Wait." Talras drove his blade into the heart of the pillar. A burst of white-hot energy erupted from the impact. The force sent Talras flying backward. The red glow of the pillar flickered, then dimmed. Sparks erupted from its base. A loud mechanical groan echoed through the chamber as the pillar's core began to melt from within. Talras struggled to his feet. His armor was scorched, his breathing ragged. Did it work? Cole checked his communicator. His face tightened. The signal's down. Outside, the AI fleet that had begun to descend toward the city suddenly faltered. Their targeting systems flickered. Ships began drifting out of formation. Human fighters moved in, cutting them down one by one. Cole's communicator buzzed. "Enemy fleet is breaking apart, sir." Cole's gaze shifted toward Talras. "You saved your people." Talras's golden eyes hardened. "We saved them together." Cole smiled faintly. "We're not done yet." Talras's gaze darkened. "No, they'll be back." Cole's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll be ready." As they emerged from the catacombs, the sky above Kalor City was still burning. But for the first time, the smoke was beginning to clear. The last AI ships were breaking apart in the distance, falling from the sky like dying stars. Human warships hovered above the city, their hulls scared but victorious. Talras stood beside Cole as human soldiers regrouped, assisting Velkar civilians. The war wasn't over, but humanity had shown the galaxy something the AI couldn't calculate. They fought together, and they wouldn't stop until the galaxy was free. The sky was burning. Black smoke curled into the crimson dusk as the last remnants of the AI fleet scattered across the atmosphere. Human warships hovered above the ruined city, their massive hulls casting dark shadows over the smoldering wreckage below. But the victory was fragile, temporary. Everyone knew it. Admiral Cole stood on the edge of the shattered command center, his dark eyes fixed on the burning horizon. Talras stood beside him, his golden eyes narrowed with grim determination. Both men were silent, listening to the distant sound of gunfire and explosions echoing through the ruined streets. "They'll regroup," Cole said quietly. Talras nodded. "They always do." Behind them, human engineers and Velkar medics worked side by side, tending to the wounded and reinforcing the perimeter. Drones hovered above, scanning for signs of movement. The AI had retreated, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before they attacked again. Cole's communicator buzzed. He lifted it to his ear. "Report." "Sir," a voice crackled through the line. "Long-range scanners just picked up something. Massive energy spike. 3 light minutes out." Cole's jaw tightened. "AI reinforcements." "Negative, sir. It's something else. A wormhole signature." Cole's eyes darkened. "That's impossible." Talras's gaze sharpened. "What is it?" Cole lowered the communicator. "A wormhole signature. If that's accurate, it means the AI have opened a gate directly into this sector." Talras's eyes widened. They could bring an entire fleet through. Cole's gaze hardened. "Exactly." A low hum filled the air. The ground beneath them trembled. Cole turned toward the horizon and saw it, faint at first, then growing stronger. The black distortion in the sky, twisting and warping like torn fabric. Flashes of white and red light pulsed from within. Then the outline of a massive ship began to emerge, a dark, jagged vessel larger than any human warship Cole had ever seen. "Admiral," the voice on the communicator came again. It's a dreadnought." Cole's chest tightened. "How long until it's fully through?" "Minutes, sir." Talras's hand curled into a fist. "We can't stop that. Not with the forces we have left." Cole's gaze darkened. "We have to." The dreadnought's hull gleamed under the flickering light of the wormhole. Red energy lines pulsed along its length, and rows of dark turrets rotated toward the planet. Smaller AI warships began pouring through the opening behind it, forming a deadly spearhead. "Targeting scanners are coming online," Cole said. "They'll launch an orbital bombardment as soon as they're in position." Talras's eyes hardened. "What's the plan?" Cole's gaze sharpened. "We send a strike team to the dreadnought. Take out their targeting systems before they can lock on." Talras's brow furrowed. "That ship is nearly invincible. How do you expect to destroy it?" Cole's jaw tightened. "We're not going to destroy it. We're going to overload its core." Talras's eyes widened. "That's suicide." Cole nodded grimly. "It's the only way." A low hum filled the air as Cole's flagship, the Vanguard, descended from the sky. Its engines glowed bright blue as it hovered above the battlefield. The human strike team was already assembling on the loading deck, heavily armed Marines in black combat armor, carrying plasma rifles and explosive charges. Cole turned toward Talras. "We'll need to get past their shields first. You up for that?" Talras's golden eyes gleamed. "I'll lead the diversion." Cole extended his hand. Talras clasped his wrist. "Don't die down there," Cole said. Talras's smile was grim. "You too." The strike team boarded the Vanguard. The ship's engines roared as it ascended toward the forming dreadnought. AI warships swarmed toward them, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Human fighters peeled off from the main formation, engaging the AI ships head-on. Explosions lit up the dark sky as the two sides clashed. Cole stood at the front of the strike team as the loading ramp lowered. The dreadnought's dark hull loomed before them, its surface covered in pulsing red lights. The Vanguard's shields flared as enemy fire pounded against them. "Braced for impact," the pilot shouted. The strike team launched from the ship, grappling onto the dreadnought's hull. Cole's boots hit the cold metal, his rifle raised as air drones swarmed toward them. Plasma fire erupted from both sides. Cole's team moved with deadly precision, cutting down the drones as they advanced toward the central core. Talras and his warriors flew alongside human fighters, drawing enemy fire and clearing a path toward the dreadnought's weak points. Talras's sword glowed with blue energy as he sliced through air drones mid-flight, his golden eyes burning with fierce determination. Cole's team breached the outer hull of the dreadnought. Sparks flew as the airlock opened, and the team moved inside. The interior was cold and dark, filled with twisting cables and red-lit corridors. The AI's presence was palpable, a low mechanical hum reverberating through the metal walls. "Target is 2 levels down," the engineer said. "Move," Cole shouted. They fought through waves of AI sentries, black metal forms with glowing red eyes. Cole's rifle burned hot as he fired round after round, cutting down the machines as they advanced toward the core. Blood and oil stained the metal floor beneath their boots. They reached the central chamber. A massive black sphere hovered above a deep pit, pulsing with red energy. The AI core. "Set the charges," Cole shouted. The team moved quickly, attaching explosives to the base of the core. Red light flared as the AI systems reacted. More sentries poured into the chamber. Cole fired until his rifle overheated. He drew his sidearm and kept shooting, covering his team as they armed the detonators. Charges set. Cole's communicator buzzed. "Admiral," the pilot's voice came through. "We've got incoming. The wormhole is destabilizing." Cole's eyes narrowed. "How long?" 2 minutes, maybe less." Cole activated the detonator. A countdown appeared on his wrist display. "Go," Cole shouted. The team turned toward the exit, but Cole stayed behind, his gaze fixed on the core as red light pulsed through the chamber. "Admiral," the engineer shouted, "we have to go." Cole shook his head. "If I don't stay, the AI could override the detonation sequence." "Sir." "Go," Cole barked. The team hesitated, then turned and ran. Cole stood alone beneath the AI core. He raised his rifle and fired a single shot into the exposed console. Sparks flew as the system shuddered. "You lose," Cole said quietly. The core erupted in red light. Cole's communicator crackled. Talras's voice came through. "Cole." Cole's voice was calm. "You're in command now." A bright flash filled the chamber. The core exploded. The dreadnought shuddered violently as fire erupted through the hull. Talras's eyes widened as the dreadnought split apart above the planet. No. The human ships began retreating as the AI fleet collapsed. The wormhole flickered, and then collapsed in on itself. The sky above Kalor was clear. Talras stood on the battlefield, his chest heaving. His communicator buzzed, but Cole's voice was gone. The dreadnought's remains burned as they fell toward the surface. Talras's gaze hardened. Humanity had saved them, but at a terrible cost. Talras stood at the edge of the ruined city, his golden eyes fixed on the burning wreckage of the AI dreadnought in the sky. Pieces of the massive warship were breaking apart, falling through the atmosphere like burning meteors. Bright red streaks of fire lit up the darkening sky as debris crashed into the already shattered surface of Kalor. The battle should have been over, but it wasn't. The AI fleet was still operational, even with the destruction of the dreadnought. Dozens of smaller AI warships remained in orbit, and they were regrouping. Talras's communicator crackled. "General, A strained voice came through. The human fleet has suffered heavy losses. Our defensive lines are breaking. Talras's jaw tightened. Understood. Hold your position. He turned toward the human command post. Captain Morales stood there, her face pale and streaked with dirt and blood. Her brown eyes were dark with exhaustion. They're not retreating, she said. That was their flagship. Without it, they should be scattered. Talras's claws curled into a fist. Unless they've adapted. Morales's gaze sharpened. That's not possible. Their AI core was destroyed. Unless there's another core, Talras said darkly. The ground beneath them shuddered. A deep mechanical hum filled the air. Talras's gaze lifted toward the horizon, and his chest tightened. Dark shapes were descending from orbit. Black, insect-like AI warships, hundreds of them. Their jagged forms cutting through the smoke-filled sky. Red lights pulsed along their hulls. They're coming, Morales said. Talras's hand moved to his sidearm. His claws tightened around the hilt. We need to regroup the ground forces. How many do we have left? Morales's face darkened. 2 battalions, maybe less. Talras's gaze sharpened. That's not enough. Morales nodded. I know. A loud screech echoed through the air. The AI warships opened fire. Streams of red plasma rained down from the sky. Explosions erupted across the ruined city. Dust and smoke filled the air. Soldiers screamed as the ground tore apart beneath their feet. Take cover, Morales shouted. Talras pulled Morales behind a collapsed building as another plasma bolt struck the ground nearby, sending shards of metal and stone flying through the air. His ears rang. He pushed himself upright and scanned the horizon. Human fighters scrambled into the sky, engaging the AI warships head-on. Red and blue streaks of light cut through the sky as plasma fire and missiles collided. Explosions lit up the darkness. Human capital ships moved into position, their cannons firing in coordinated bursts. AI drones swarmed toward them, their weapons flaring with deadly precision. This isn't a fight we can win, Morales said. Not like this. Talras's eyes narrowed. We need to finish it. Morales looked at him. How? Talras's gaze darkened. We have to destroy the core. Morales's brow furrowed. The core is gone. Talras shook his head. Not the main core. There's another one. A backup. The AI wouldn't risk sending a fleet of this size without a failsafe. Where would it be? Talras's gaze shifted toward the sky. The largest AI warship, the one now sitting at the center of the formation, was pulsing with red light. There, he said. Morales's eyes widened. That's a carrier ship. We don't have the firepower to penetrate its shields. Talras's claws flexed. We don't need to penetrate it. We just need to get inside. Morales's eyes widened. You're talking about a boarding operation. Exactly. Morales hesitated. Cole was leading the last one. Talras's eyes darkened. I'll lead this one. Morales stared at him for a moment. Then she nodded. I'll assemble the strike team. Minutes later, the strike team was gathered on the loading deck of the human cruiser Valkyrie. Heavily armed human marines stood side by side with Velkar warriors, their weapons charged and ready. The ship's engines hummed beneath their feet as the Valkyrie ascended toward the AI fleet. Shields at maximum, the pilot called out. ETA, 2 minutes. Talras stood at the front of the strike team. Morales stood beside him, her rifle resting against her shoulder. You ready for this? Morales asked. Talras's golden eyes gleamed. No. Morales smirked. Good. The ship shook as AI fire struck the hull. Alarms blared. Targeting scanners locking on, the pilot shouted. We need to move now. Open the ramp. Talras shouted. Loading bay doors slid open. A wall of dark metal loomed ahead, the hull of the AI carrier. Talras's warriors fired grappling lines. Talras launched himself forward, his claws digging into the black metal as he climbed toward the entry point. Covering fire, Morales shouted. Human Marines fired bursts of plasma into the AI defenses. Talras reached the airlock and planted a charge. The door exploded inward. He leaped through the opening, his plasma sword igniting as AI sentries converged. The Velkar and human Marines poured in behind him, opening fire. Red plasma lit up the corridor. Talras cut through the nearest sentry, his blade slicing through metal and wiring. Sparks flew. Where's the core? Morales shouted. Central chamber, Talras replied. They pushed forward, fighting through waves of sentries. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of burning metal. AI drones swarmed toward them, their weapons pulsing with red light. Talras's sword moved in a blur, cutting down one drone after another. They reached the central chamber. A massive black sphere hovered above the floor, pulsing with red light. The backup core. Set the charges, Talras shouted. Morales' team moved quickly, planting explosives around the base of the core. AI drones swarmed toward them. Talras cut down the nearest ones, his sword burning with blue light. Charges set, Morales shouted. Talras's communicator buzzed. General, the pilot's voice crackled through the line. The core's energy levels are rising. They're overloading the system. Talras's eyes narrowed. They'd rather destroy the ship than let us take it. Detonate the charges, Morales shouted. Talras hesitated. We need to disable the shield generators first. We don't have time. Talras growled. He leaped toward the core, his sword flashing. He drove the blade into the core's base. Sparks erupted. The red light flared brightly, then dimmed. Talras turned toward Morales. Now. Morales hit the detonator. The core erupted in white-hot light. The ship shuddered violently as explosions tore through the hull. Move, Talras shouted. They ran toward the exit. Explosions erupted around them. The walls were breaking apart. Metal and fire rained from the ceiling. Talras's boots struck the floor hard as he dove through the airlock just before the entire chamber collapsed in on itself. The Valkyrie pulled away as the AI carrier erupted in a massive explosion. A shockwave tore through the AI fleet. The remaining warships flickered, and then collapsed. The AI ships fell from the sky, burning as they hit the planet's surface. Talras stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, breathing hard as he watched the wreckage fall from the sky. It's over, Morales whispered. Talras's gaze darkened. For now. The wreckage of the AI fleet still burned in the darkened sky. Fire and smoke trailed across the horizon as the shattered remains of AI warships descended into Kellor's atmosphere, crashing into the already devastated surface below. The ground trembled with each impact. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would remain for generations. Talras stood at the edge of the ruined city, the cold wind brushing against his gray fur. His golden eyes reflected the dim glow of the burning sky. Around him, the remnants of the human and Velkar forces were gathering, treating the wounded and pulling survivors from the rubble. The air was thick with smoke and the distant sound of crackling fires. Captain Morales approached from behind. Her armor was scratched and scorched from battle, and dried blood streaked her forehead. Despite the exhaustion in her eyes, there was a quiet strength beneath the surface. You did it, Morales said softly. Talras's claws flexed at his sides. We did it. Morales exhaled and looked toward the horizon, where the last remains of the AI fleet were falling. It feels strange. We've been fighting for so long, and now it's over. Talras's gaze darkened. It's not over. Not yet. Morales's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Talras's golden eyes narrowed. The AI was not acting alone. It adapted too quickly. There was intelligence behind it. Morales's jaw tightened. A central AI intelligence. Talras nodded slowly. Possibly, or something worse. Morales sighed and rubbed the back of her neck. We'll deal with it when the time comes. Talres's gaze shifted toward the remains of the city. His people, along with the human soldiers, were working together to clear the rubble. Injured Velkar were being treated by human medics. Human engineers were assisting Velkar construction crews, using portable field generators to stabilize the damaged structures. This alliance, Talres said quietly. It wasn't supposed to happen. Morales smiled faintly. Neither was this war. Talres's gaze sharpened. It won't last. Morales's smile faded. Maybe not, but it's a start. A low rumble filled the air. Talres's ears twitched. He turned toward the sky. A human transport ship was descending toward the city, its thrusters kicking up a cloud of dust and ash. The ship settled on a cleared stretch of ground. The loading ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. From the ship, a line of human soldiers descended. Their uniforms were crisp, their faces weary but determined. Among them was a tall figure wearing a long black military coat. His silver hair was slicked back, and his sharp blue eyes scanned the battlefield with cold precision. General Langley. Langley approached with measured steps. His gaze swept over the wreckage and the gathered soldiers. His expression remained impassive. General Langley, Morales said, straightening. Welcome to Kellor. Langley's gaze settled on Morales. Captain, I trust the mission was successful. Morales's jaw tightened. We destroyed the core. The AI fleet is finished. Langley's gaze shifted toward Talres. And the Velkar forces. Decimated, Talres said coldly. We lost over 70% of our ground troops. Langley's expression remained unchanged. Acceptable losses. Talres's golden eyes narrowed. Acceptable. Langley's gaze sharpened. You won the war. Your people survived. Talres stepped closer, his claws flexing. Do not speak of my people as if they were statistics. Langley's gaze remained steady. Humanity has sacrificed much to protect the Velkar. This war cost us lives as well. Talres's gaze darkened. We never asked for your help. Langley's cold smile didn't reach his eyes. And yet, without us, you would have lost. Morales stepped between them. Enough. Langley's gaze lingered on Talres for a moment before he turned toward Morales. Command will expect a full report. You'll get one, Morales replied. Langley's eyes narrowed slightly. See that I do. He turned and strode back toward the transport ship. The human soldiers followed him, their boots striking the metal ramp in unison. Talres's claws curled into fists. Your general is arrogant. Morales's eyes darkened. He's a politician. He didn't fight in the trenches. He didn't lose men. Talres's gaze softened. But you did. Morales's expression tightened. Yeah, we all did. They stood in silence for a moment. The distant sound of burning wreckage crackled through the air. After a while, Morales turned toward Talres. What happens now? Talres's gaze swept across the battlefield. We rebuild. And after that? Talres's golden eyes narrowed. We prepare. For what? Talres's gaze darkened. The eye was not the true threat. Something controlled them. Something powerful. Morales's eyes narrowed. And you think it's still out there? Talres's claws flexed. I know it is. Morales sighed and rubbed the back of her neck. Guess that means this isn't over after all. No, Talres said quietly. It's only the beginning. Across the ruined city, Velkar and human engineers were already beginning to reconstruct the broken infrastructure. Portable generators hummed as power was restored to parts of the city. Emergency medical shelters were being assembled. Human and Velkar children watched from the edges of the rubble, their wide eyes filled with quiet hope. Talres watched a young Velkar child clutching the hand of a human medic. The child's eyes were wide with fear, but the medic's hand was steady. The child's trembling eased. Talres's gaze softened. Perhaps this alliance was meant to happen. Morales smiled faintly. Maybe. A soft breeze stirred the dust and ash. Talras's golden eyes narrowed as he looked toward the horizon, where the last burning wreckage of the AI fleet was still falling. His claws flexed at his sides. "We will be ready," he said quietly. Moreles's gaze sharpened. "And if they come back?" Talras's eyes gleamed. "Then we will show them why humanity and the Velkar are not to be underestimated." Moreles smirked. "Now that's a plan I can get behind." They stood side by side, watching the dawn rise over the shattered city. The fires were still burning, but the light of the sun was stronger now. The darkness was fading. A new beginning.